We have Congressman Luis Gutierrez on the line, and we have Lorella Praeli here talking about how Friday's announcement of the president's immigration policy for dreamers, dream-eligible young folks like yourself who came here as children, how that came about. When you started, the congressman talked about pressure on the inside, pressure on the outside. Conversations in the White House, very loud conversations happening outside the White House. Were there people telling you to back off when
Absolutely.
you started go?
Absolutely. I would say even many progressives were telling us, don't do this. It's an important year. You don't want to put the spotlight on the president. And we were saying we don't work for President Obama, Democrats, or the Republicans. We have a responsibility to our community. And there's an opportunity here. The president should be doing his job. And we're going to go after that.
And the irony, of course, is that in pushing the president to make this decision, Congressman, what you saw from the Republican reaction says a lot to me about actually this not just being the right policy on the merits, but being the right policy politically, because the reaction gives it away in that sense.
It does, Chris. Let me suggest to you that getting arrested in front of the White House 2 years in a row after we worked so hard to elect this president was not easy, but I think it was important. Not just I, but many activists for the last 3.5 years have been around this country challenging this president. But let me just say that the action he took from a person who has been very critical of this president and has publicly stated this, that the action he took is significant and meaningful, and it is already beginning from the moment he made that announcement to heal the kind of fraying that occurred between a huge Latino community that came out in gangbusters in 2008 to help elect him president and moving forward. And yes, you see the Republicans. So now you see this very stark contrast, one that we wanted. What did Latinos want? They wanted him to fight. They wanted him to shine a light on injustice and unfairness and to be our champion. And what he did Friday was say, I'm your champion. And you know what? Whether it may come a little later than you wanted, but he is our champion, and that's what people wanted to see him do. So you got Mitt Romney, who says that the Dreamers should simply self-deport and that he would veto the DREAM Act. And you have a Barack Obama who is saying, I will use the authority that I have as president to make sure you can stay here. Because what we have to do is stop the deportation, because this will allow us to incorporate. Don't think that after we pass comprehensive immigration reform, we'll do. Eventually, we're simply going to say, oh, we were just kidding, why don't you just come on back? No, once you're deported, you are basically gone from the system.
And in some ways, I think the irony of this whole thing is that I think from talking to folks around the White House and some of the advocates also, the White House thought that the increasing of deportation, doubling down on enforcement, was going to create the political space to move things through Congress. I mean, the president said that explicitly in the State of the Union. He said to Congress, I've gotten tough on immigration, so now we can have this conversation. But of course, that was not how it played out.
It wasn't how it played out because Republicans don't want to see action. In 2004, I and Senator McCain, Senator Kennedy introduced comprehensive. It was bipartisan, it was bicameral, and my colleague, Congressman Flake, was the co-sponsor with me, right? We did it together in the House. It was Flake, Gutierrez, and then when we took over the majority, it was Gutierrez, Flake. And now Congressman Flake is out there in Arizona campaigning as though that never happened. And of course, he'd like nothing better than for me to go and denounce him, because he probably, and rightfully so, think that might help him. But you have to understand, we no longer have that partnership. So the president had to act because Congress would not.
Congressman, I want you to stick around because I want to talk about the possibility of this being something that happens in the second term. And there's a really interesting quote that was given in an article this week that suggested that might be the case. I also want to talk about a little bit of heckling on the White House lawn right after we come back.